And that's us live. Hello and welcome to Celtic State of Mind. My name's Kevin Graham and today I'm joined with young Patrick. Patrick, how are you getting on, mate? Long time since I've been on with you.
Hi, I'm doing well, doing well. I think it's been a month or two since I've seen you.
Aye,
So I think probably pre-season or just at the start of the season. So it's an exciting time to be a Celtic fan, in my opinion. Be interested to hear
aye.
your thoughts on the start of the season. But I mean, we've made a phenomenal start. We've got a phenomenal draw in the Champions League. Broke our transfer record twice. Got a great manager, in my opinion. I'm interested to hear where your Rodgers-ometer is at
Roger's
these
on it.
days.
I thought I was getting away with that. I really did
Or
think I
the
was getting away with it for Roger's ometer, but I will answer it, no problem. Well, I've got a lot to talk about because that's us now to the international break and we're headlong. What I usually do at this point of the season, is always have a look at the games in between the international breaks and see where I want to be going into the next international break because that's this part of the season is always put into wee sections, and obviously we've got the glamour of the Champions League to get added in there. Um, first couple of times, first I've got a wee couple of housekeeping things to actually do. Um, First things first, I need to say hi to Craig, who I met at a wedding a couple of weeks ago. Big Acsom fan. Had a very good night with him and a good couple of pints, and he's a very decent chap. So, Craig, thanks for watching and listening and supporting the channel. And also, I don't think if you did you hear me last Monday, Patrick, when I was on after the Celtic Rangers game, and I was talking about the banner. I was talking about the Green Brigade banner, the St Mungo banner that was raised, and I raised a wee story about a guy in front of me. I says an old 60-year-old that was shouting at the Green Brigade because he wanted to see the teams coming out. Well, the 60-year-old contacted Paul. He did, yes, to put me right, and he was quite right to put me right because I only got maybe a quarter of the story. Now, first things first, if Jim's watching, sorry about this, Jim, but I just the way the situation unfolded, I actually found quite funny. But first things first, Jim, I says he was a 60-year-old. Jim's actually in his 70s, and he looks really, really well for somebody in his 70s. I'll need to get he must drink smoothies or something like that because he looks really good for a man in his 70s. And what he did actually tell me was he wasn't shouting for him, he was shouting for his grandmains because they wanted to see the teams coming out. I didn't see the Waynes. I just saw the altercation and found it amusing that there was an old guy. Like, so Jim, apologies. I didn't mean anything with it. I just found the whole situation a bit amusing. But now you've put me right with the whole story. I do feel slightly embarrassed about it, but hey ho, these things happen. I'm not as embarrassing as Jamie Murphy though, Patrick.
What's
I'm
that
not.
about? That story?
Did you not heard
Uh,
that story? No.
Aye, someone phoned up Brighton and told them Rangers were skint. Is that what you're talking about?
Aye,
I've not
that
listened to the
one
full
there.
podcast. I've just seen that clip.
I haven't listened to the full podcast either, but just the the accusation, that it was Celtic that called up Brighton to tell them that Rangers were skint and not to sign Jamie Murphy. Um,
I
and the
think
way
that
that
was.
I've only seen the clip yet, and the way that he says on the clip, he goes like that. Let's just say an SPL club. So it could have been any one of the SPL clubs that Rangers owed money at that point. So, I
Aye,
mean,
exactly. I mean, I think if memory serves me right, he signed for them in 2017, and I think in 2017 it didn't take a detective or a Scottish football someone inside the inner workings of Scottish football to tell Brighton that Rangers were skint. Um, I
I
think
know.
it would have been Kishinya that summer. We were just off the back of an invincible treble. Um, maybe he's making the link with Brighton and Dembele and Celtic were in contact with Brighton. I don't know, but it doesn't take a detective. I mean, they've been skint since 2012, and that never more so now, in my opinion.
They've probably been skint since 2000 when Martin O'Neill came round, but they just spent money that they didn't have, and then they crashed in 2012. I did find it quite funny that they actually believe that now in 2017 we've got Brendan Rodgers. and we're just off an invincible treble, that we would be phoning Brighton to tell them not to sign, to say, didn't sell the winger that doesn't get a game for you, called Jamie Murphy, to our rivals, because we're absolutely bricking it for him. It just does not make any sense whatsoever. And it wasn't even as if we were interested in him. You know what I mean? The story just makes no sense whatsoever. And I just found it funny that it's the way that he actually says, let's just say another SPL club. Just the way that he says that, I went, oh Jesus, man. And it's actually got them quite excited because they've won the international break cup again. Because they've backed their manager and knew this is, oh look, the Celtic are running scared because they phoned Brighton in 2017 to tell us not to sign Jamie Murphy. It shows you that we're always in their heads. Bizarre people, really, really bizarre people. As I says last week, any adult that calls themselves a teddy bear needs to have a good look at themselves. It really, really does.
That's you're put in the same basket as Prince Andrew there, isn't he? Because he loves his teddy bears. I've seen that documentary about Emily Maitlis interviewing him, and
Aye.
it was made a big deal that he loves his teddy bears. So, um, a bit suspect these people. I'd agree with you there.
Definitely, and the videos for George Square actually prove that. There's a lot of suspect people in the walk amongst us, and it's really quite scary. And that's the thing about social media. You see these guys now and these women now and that, and you go, whereas before you just didn't think they existed. They existed in their own wee living rooms and that, but now everybody's got a platform. We may as well move on to football. Barry Bannon, 10 years at Sheffield Wednesday. He wants Celtic to go down and play his testimonial. Bannon's
All
been a
right,
big
that's news to me.
Bannon's been a
I've
big
not heard
massive
that.
Bannon's been a big massive Celtic fan, a very vocal Celtic fan as well since he's been down there. He's played for Aston Villa, so he was interviewed recently and he says that he wants Celtic to go down and play his testimonial, or Aston Villa, the other team that he played for, but more than likely would like Celtic to go down there as well. So we might have a wee trip to Sheffield at some point in the near future. Let's talk about Scottish football. The the Scottish football, the business that absolutely hates itself and wants to kill itself. And it brings us to St Johnstone. Now, St Johnstone are join a long list of teams who have now cut our allocation. It is only a section, right enough. But since 2020, we've lost a stand and now we've lost another section when we go to St Johnstone. What is it with Scottish football and these owners who like to ignore the gift horse that is the Celtic fans, the Celtic support, and who will sell out their stadiums? What is it about them? And especially the guy Faye St Johnson, who's an American. I thought Americans wouldn't actually entertain this because they come from a background where sport is entertainment and bums on seats is money. And again,
Mhm.
this is just another example of a club trying to appease 250 fair weather supporters.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I've never been able to understand it. I think the argument goes that they'd rather have home advantage or they'd rather try and build up their home support. Which, in the case of, I think Hearts have done it relatively well. I think Aberdeen are now coming and doing that relatively well as well. And it's fair enough. I mean, if they sell out those seats that they're taking off us, no complaints at all. But particularly St Johnson, particularly Motherwell as well, I think are quite bad for it. You see empty seats when we visit there as well. I cannot understand it. Turning away paying customers. If they really wanted to build up their home support, they should be lowering ticket prices, charging over 30 quid. For almost every single SPFL game is criminal, really. If you want to get young fans in, sort of young fans with young parents, and try and make it a family club, a community club, Motherwell do great stuff with mental health, and I'm not picking on them, but it's just an example I've raised. Clubs like St Johnstone, clubs like maybe Hibs who are shutting away fans out. they should be lowering their prices to try and get bums on seats, because it's clearly not about money. They're turning away hundreds, if not thousands, of paying customers by reducing these allocations. Celtic, I don't think have ever had more money. I think our turnover last year was the biggest it's ever been. I think in the next few weeks, when our accounts come out, it's going to be even bigger. So we don't need the money. We just want to go and watch our team play. So they're cutting their nose off to spite their face, and then they're not taking the meaningful steps to reach the destination they allegedly want to get to, which is more fans, more home fans in the ground. Some teams, as I say, have pulled it off. Hearts, Aberdeen, they're doing quite well. Hearts last season had a good season. Aberdeen this season are doing quite well, but it's a strange trajectory we're going into. I seen on Twitter a few days ago, it was an Old Firm game, and it was an Old Firm game from the 1960s, back when it was an Old Firm game. And it was near enough 50-50, the allocations, and I believe the game
Mhm.
was played at Celtic Park. And I'm not saying games should be 50-50. I wouldn't like that at Celtic Park, but there should be a sizable away support, and if you've got empty seats sitting there, they should be filled. And you look at the Premier League. I've always said, you look at the Premier League. They're all about maximising entertainment value, maximising money profits. There's not an empty seat in any of their stadiums. I mean, Burnley, Sheffield United sold out. They give the tickets away if they have to, but even when we have two stands up at St Johnstone, even sometimes when we have three stands, there's empty seats. So they're taking one direction by cutting out away supporters, but they're not taking the other direction by making it more affordable for home supporters. So, um, I think their chairman stepped down after 10, 20 years. I
Mhm.
think he owns them, or he used to own them, and he stepped
I
down in the
think
summer there. So,
His Celtic majority shareholding now. It's
right,
past Jeff Brown was his name. I'd been
aye,
in the Brown family for generations, and he's actually now stepped away. I mean, the new American owner is spending quite a bit of money, like on the training ground and stuff like that. So
hmm
it's for me, it's utterly bizarre, and maybe mainly talking from a selfish point of view because I want to go to more away games. But it's getting more and more difficult for me to go to more away games. Cell 88 comes in. I'm not 100% sure, but it sounded like the American said he was reducing the allocation to make a seating area for disabled fans. What he actually says was he still had to give Celtic one section so we could have a disabled allocation. That's the reason that we've only got we used to get section, as Declan pointed out to me last night. We used to have section A and B in that main stand, and now we're only going to get section B, which has got disabled access in the main stand at St Johnstone. They also used to sell those tickets direct to local Celtic fans in Perth, if I remember correctly, but I don't know if that still actually happens. I mean, it is getting more and more difficult. What I would say to the St Johnstone fans, and I'm lucky or unlucky enough that a couple of my friends are St Johnstone fans, and I've spoke to them about this quite a few times, and they agree with where's Durban Coolshay. St Johnstone fans don't want to listen to us, and that's the bottom line. And that is one thing that they say. They say, "Oh, we didn't like you coming in and taking over your stadium, taking over a stadium." And I says to the guy, I went, "You didn't need to go then." I went, "You didn't need to go. If you didn't
hmm
like it, didn't go." I says, "But what you've got to remember, when you've done the double in the 2021 season, right? The season before that, you had gave Celtic and Rangers free stands. That squad you got the following season was the strongest squad you've have had in a decade, and you've won two trophies. As soon as you cut our allocation, you're back down the bottom of the league. So what are you? You cut your nose off to spite your face there. I've got evidence for yous that the money that we gave you that season gave you the best season that yous have had in a generation. No, your best season you've had in your history. And you don't want that to happen again just to appease a couple of hundred season ticket holders. And I think that is ridiculous. My view is the quicker Celtic get out of Scottish football, the better. We need to find a
Aye.
way to get out of Scottish football because we're getting strangled in Scottish football. And I go back to it and I remember laughing at the time when Barry Hearn was up. Barry Hearn wouldn't have allowed this to happen. Barry
No,
Hearn would have been
of
telling
course
the
not.
clubs, no, you have to sell these seats.
Aye. Aye. It's I've spoken about I think in the past on here about the new European format. I think the new Champions League format was actually meant to have 10 games and they've reduced it to 8. And then you've got that playoff section now that we're obviously all hoping to get into. But the way European football's going, we went from 6 to 8 games. The League Cup, I think, serves us no purpose at all other than winning trebles. I think the top 6 in Scotland shouldn't compete in the League Cup. If we are aiming for Hearts and Aberdeen and Hibs maybe to make progress in Europe and be in European group stage competition every single season consistently to boost revenue and to boost the coefficient, and then obviously Celtic and Rangers in the Champions League and Europa League, and you're going to be playing those 8 games, that League Cup is worth nothing to Celtic and Rangers in terms of money. It's 300 grand, I think, the prize pot. Obviously, you have the gate receipts from the 2 games that we've played and the 2 games at Hampden, but the trophy itself has been referred to as a Diddy Cup for years, decades. It's only really good for a treble, if we're being honest. I know it sort of gave Ange momentum in his first 6 months, gets a
Aye.
trophy over the line, and
I was
we
going
can
to
show that
ask
we
you
can
that there.
win.
I was going to chuck that back at you, going, I was, but
Uh,
then
so
you've just headed me off there.
I'm playing devil's advocate for
Aye.
myself. But no, I don't think it's something that realistically can continue. But I mean, you've got the problem of, Neil Doncaster, I think, was in the radio 2 weeks ago talking about a 14-team league, and he said it was just totally unworkable. Cut our revenues in half, and every time there's a new idea, Neil Doncaster's there to sort of cut it down again, just tell us it's not possible, and it's poor management from the SPFL. But I think it's going to come to a point where European revenues, European games, it's clearly where the future is. It's so important. We're going to have to either start playing youngsters, fire the Celtic B team in there, get them playing those 4 games, a bit like what the Glasgow Cup has become, or just withdraw totally from it. Because you've got now, I think it's 4 or 5 European spots in Scottish football. So if
Mhm.
you take that top 6, I mean, they don't compete in the group stage anyway, the top 6, just take them out of the competition totally. Um, so that would be one suggestion, but I think you're right. I think Scottish football, as you say, cutting its nose off to spite its face, it costing itself. I think it would come into 6 figures, wouldn't it? Cutting our
Aye.
allocation for some of these sides, the price of tickets nowadays. So, I mean, cutting its nose off to spite its face to the point where it's going to bleed out. And the gulf is going to be so large that it would make more financial sense for us to hop into some sort of British league or the Premier League or some sort of European league with Belgium and the Dutch and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, there's nothing on the cards just now, but the Champions League is our main priority. We need to get those 9 points, get the 2 extra games, and it's just the gap between Celtic and the rest is just growing more and more every year.
It is, and there is quite a few in the comments disagreeing with us, Patrick, which is fair enough. I get
Hmm.
disagreed with my own house all the time, and I've got used to it now. Um, HISC, I'm in the minority of one when I say I don't care if other SPFL clubs reduce their Celtic allocation. It's their club, and these clubs do not exist to give Celtic fans a nice day. The Urban Culture is with them, and so is Jim. Jim's with him as well. What I would say there is, I get your point, but then when these clubs come out moaning saying they can't compete financially, and say they can't compete financially, and then they knock back £750,000 in a game, then didn't come running to us. Didn't complain that you can't compete financially or you can't improve your standard financially because they won't be able to compete. They won't be able to completely compete financially. Um, didn't come running to us when you say that you couldn't sign that reserve striker for Wycombe Wanderers because we haven't got £500,000. Well, if you felt a stand for Celtic fans, you would have had that £500,000. bottom line for me, I think it's a simple argument. And the thing is, them reducing the allocation only affects the normal Celtic fan, because corporate will only get their allocation reduced at Celtic. It'll be the supporters' buses that will get their allocation reduced. It'll be those individuals who are on the registration scheme will get their allocation reduced. Instead of being 7 away games in the last 11 or whatever it'll be down to 5 away games. But the corporate will never get their away allocation reduced. So St Johnstone are no harming, like the St Johnstone are only taking it out on the normal working fan here. It's not going to affect all of them sitting in the corporate seats, and that kind of
Am I
annoys
right
me
in
as well.
saying that every single game you split the proceeds each team? Am I right in saying that?
No,
No.
that used to be the case until the SPL was um, formed in 1997.
All right. Okay.
You used to get, I think it used to be a 50-50 split. Somebody that's older than me will be able to tell me in the comments, but I'm sure if we got 50,000 at Celtic Park, then Aberdeen would get half of that 50,000, or whoever the opponents would get half of that money. That's why you had so many strange attendances at Celtic
Right.
Park when it was packed out 60,000. The board would come out and say there was 28,726 at the game. It's because they were splitting the money. Again, if you're talking about a socialist utopia here, then you could maybe go back to that, and then these teams couldn't moan if they were getting 50% of the gates when they come to Celtic Park.
Mhm.
And Rangers, then you could go, well, you can compete now.
Aye. What I would say is, I mean, if that was the case, which I think it isn't anymore, people are saying it's only for cup games. Don't give them away tickets for the cup games. I know there's what is it, 5%, 10%. I mean, if they're going to rely on sort of big paydays from coming to Celtic Park in the cup, don't give them any tickets and deny them of that revenue. If they're going to deny us tickets, deny them the cash. Um, we've had trouble in the past about dealing with these clubs who think they're entitled to more money. I think the main one is Rod Petrie and Peter Lawwell over John McGinn. He wanted 300 grand more from us than he did from Aston Villa because it's Celtic and it's Peter Lawwell. If they're going to treat us like that, why should we pay them that money if they're going to lock out away fans? Um, so again, I do actually agree with AGSC. It is down to them; they can do what they like. We're just giving our perspective. The gulf between Celtic and the rest has never been larger. Um, it was only 20 years ago you had Aberdeen signing players for 1, 2, 3 million quid. Now that's pretty much unthinkable. And fair play to Aberdeen, they've got a wee sort of ultra section behind the goal. They seem to fill the stadium most weeks now, but there's other clubs that are cutting their nose off to spite their face, and it's not something I would be doing if I was a
Oh,
cash-strapped club with a
I mean,
turnover of 3 or 4 million a year.
we if you take away us, we've got an emotional attachment to it, but there's a spectacle, and you're actually selling a spectacle. And Scottish football does not look good on TV with all these with all these empty seats and stuff like that. And it's like it doesn't look good. And what you've got, what you've actually got to actually remember is a spectacle that they're trying to sell. And we can shout at Neil Doncaster and that all we want, right? We could talk about Neil Doncaster all day, but we're not going to. But he's gone to Sky, and Sky are going, well, there's two men in a dug sitting in a stand watching that. You go to Motherwell, and it always amazes me sometimes at Motherwell that they'll put the away fans in the top behind the goals to make the bottom section look empty. And I go, it just looks dreadful on TV. And look, I'm not bored about how it looks on TV, but the telly folk are bored how it looks on TV. And you just watch it, and just sometimes if you're flicking through the channels and you're looking, if you're looking for something to watch and stuff like that, and you look at any other game in Europe, right? You go to the Polish league. It's bouncing. Every game you turn on, it's bouncing. Turkish league doesn't seem to be well attended right enough at any of the games I've watched like that. But there's very rarely that you get to a game where it looks like Scottish football. It really does. And I think that's what I'm more getting. And also I'm being selfish because I want to go to more away games. I grew up going to the away games. My daughter's at the age where she wants to go to the away games now, and it's really, really difficult to try and get on that ladder now because the amount of tickets are getting cut. Yes, I'm being selfish. I'll put my hands up, put my two hands up, and I'll admit I'm taking this for a selfish point of view. And I don't know. I'm not really bored about that. I'm in charge of this podcast today, so I can take it for a selfish point of view if I want to take it for a selfish point of view. I'm going to bring up a question here. Where is it? Urban Kulshi again. Should Bayern and Man City leave their leagues? I would probably say that Bayern and Man City would want some form of Super League as soon as possible. And the way things are going, they are going to get it, in my opinion. And I think Celtic should be at the forefront for pushing for a cross-border or a pan-European league as well. I really do. I think we've outgrown Scotland financially, and I'm even talking about our rivals there. We have outgrown Scotland financially, and that will bring us to the tagline, which will get round to the new. Mick 1967 says Barry Hearn, one of the biggest shysters ever. He was. He was, if that's your view. I says, but what he actually spoke about the Scottish game was true. I mean, you look what he's done to the darts. You can get 13,000 folk in the Ali Pali. Ali Pali watching darts, and they're basically sitting away up the back, paid 50 quid a ticket to watch it on a big screen. That is that's a great form of marketing. It really is a great form of marketing. It's something that I haven't really been interested in going to see. The darts. It looks like utter hell, folk dressed up and singing Yaya Tory songs and stuff like that. Not for this bear. No, I'm not a bear. No, not for this guy. But aye, we talk about the gap in Scottish football. Celtic have just spent £11 million on a player and £9 million on a player, £3.5 million on Bernardo as well, £1 million on the Danish internationalist as well. So the tagline today is Celtic smashing their transfer record should be a warning call to all the rest of Scottish football. I bumped into a guy in the Kings Park in Stirling and who watched Acsom, and he asked me at the start, just before the transfer one day, I was in June time, and he went like that to me. He says, "Oh, what are you feeling about the league?" I says, "If we get our transfer business right, then we'll walk the league." And the money that we've spent and the improvements that Brendan Rodgers has actually made, I think the fact that even with the improvements Brendan made, the fact that we smashed their transfer record and got close to the Scottish transfer record as well should be a massive warning call to Scottish football that we actually mean business.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Just looking at how we're playing in pre-season, and I'm not a great lover of pre-season, if I'm being honest. I really find it hard to sit through a friendly game, even if it is Celtic. But the way we were playing, some of the football we were playing over in America was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, we carved open DC United, but they looked like quite a poor side, to be honest. Then you go into the Man City game, and it was 4-3, last minute winner and all that, and it's just a friendly. But some of the goals were scored back to front. The passing was exceptional. Obviously, you've got O'Reilly in there. He's now left. Yeah, I was of the view, to be honest, this might come back and bite me. I really don't think it will. I thought we were going to win the league this season anyway. Even if O'Reilly went and we just brought in Bernardo to replace him, I thought the league was safe, if I'm being honest. The fact that we brought in these reinforcements, we're still playing really well. We've kept Kyogo, we've kept Hatate. Apart from maybe a small doubt over Johnson, we've not got any massive injuries going into this part of the season. And obviously, as you say,
it's a Wednesday, so the Canada are playing tonight, eh? So Johnson would have been one of the last ones back anyway, I think. And the Canadian manager says he should play the night.
Oh, did he? I never
Aye.
seen that comment. I seen the comment 2 days ago saying it was a tightness and he should be okay, or he's hoping he's okay.
Mhm.
So, fingers crossed. It probably won't happen, but fingers crossed he doesn't play tonight. And maybe rested on Saturday as well and ready for Bratislava next Wednesday. But yeah, I think the financial gap, it would be a miracle for one of the other teams to win the league. I mean, obviously, we always discount all the other Scottish teams, but the state that our rivals are currently in, that squad is horrendous. Uh, the guy seems like a half decent manager, but he seems to have lost the plot the last couple of months with what he's had to deal with. And as I've just said, it's a young squad, youngish. The players aren't particularly good, whereas we look as good as we've ever looked under Brendan Rodgers, to be honest. We've got a really good squad. We've spent a lot of money on it. We know the qualities of most of the players, and you've then got guys like Engels, Trusty, McCowan to complement all that. So very, very confident, to be honest, this season. And I meant to mention it last week. I think this is where we all wanted to be 7 years ago. Because in the first season, we do the invincible treble. We're playing really well. We've got a great team, and then you think, right, we've got the Champions League money. Let's kick on. Let's do something in Europe. And the first game you go out, you get horsed. I think it's 5-0 PSG at home, and you're totally deflated. And then it's just a scalping after scalping. We had a tough group, and we do eventually get through to Zenit. But you go into that Zenit game, and we were unlucky with injuries. But you've got guys like Kouassi playing. I think you had a centre half shortage at that time. Beaton played at centre half for most of the European games, and you just never really kicked on. And I think we wanted it last summer. We wanted to really kick on. Second season in the Champions League. Let's get some quality players in. And it does look as if we've finally done it this year. We've not got the 30 million net spend that Yogi wanted. We've actually made a profit of 9 million, which is a good thing. We might want to spend more, get more quality players in, but it's good to make a profit. But I mean, you've broken that transfer record twice. You appear to have gotten three or four really good players in. I think we've improved the squad, so I'm really, really hopeful for this season. If I'm being honest, these next two games, Hearts and Slovan, you can put yourself 8 points clear in the league, albeit having played an extra game, and you can get 3 points on the board. First Champions League game, you need the 9 points to get through. So it's a really, really good time to be a Celtic fan, in my opinion.
It's a really good time to be a Celtic fan, and I says we would have a net spend of zero. So I was even off with that we'd have a net spend
You're
of zero.
you're 9 million out, Kev.
I was 9 million out, and again, I'm not the biggest supporter of the board, but the amount of business that they actually did get done, moving guys out and getting money for these guys was actually quite phenomenal. I found it interesting, and I haven't spoke to you about this, Patrick. I listened to the podcast yesterday, and Liam says that we'd overspent on Adam Eder to the tune of about £4 or £5 million. And it's quite difficult. I don't think we did overspend on Adam Eder because basically that's what Norwich accepted, and Brendan Rodgers wanted the player, and us not getting Adam Eder would have been a worst case in us supposedly overspending for Adam Eder. I didn't think we overspent on Adam Eder because Brendan Rodgers wanted him. I just think it should have been done far, far earlier. But then again, we
Mhm.
didn't ken how we don't know how troublesome Norwich were being with this transfer.
Aye, I think they were being sold. I think something like 90% of their ownership was being sold. So they were in the process of a takeover, so they wanted the cash. But I don't think we overspent at all. I mean, you can look at the sort of the Moneyball model that some people sometimes talk about, and every player's got a value and will never overspend. And it's the way Warren Buffett's became the richest man in the world, and it's sort of like how Fergus McCann operated. He never went out and splashed the cash. He was always, everything's got a value, and we're not going to overpay. We can't afford to overpay. Try to rebuild the stadium. So you can have that model, but at the same time, I think we probably went into the summer 40, 50 million in the bank, knowing that we need these three, four, five positions. And fair enough, you overpay for 4 or 5 million. But to then look at Brendan's point of view, and this might not happen with Ida, but he said a few weeks ago, you can't always get the £1 million player and sell him for 30. Sometimes you're going to have to spend the 8 or 9 and maybe sell them for 35 or 40, which is still a fantastic piece of business. It's not the same percentages and margins and stuff, but you're still making tens of millions of quid, tens of millions of pounds. And, I actually don't think Adam Ida will go for 30, 40 million. I think that's probably a bit pie in the sky. But we had cash in the bank. We knew what we wanted. We knew what we needed. And it was a straightforward solution to get over the line. Are there better players for less money? Almost certainly. But we had a guarantee of goals, and a guarantee of goals in big games and big moments. I mean, if you look back, the 2 penalties at Hibs, the 2 goals at Motherwell, the 2 goals against Rangers, he scores away to Kilmarnock the night we win the league. I think he opens the scoring. Just a fantastic asset to have, and to know what you're getting as well. I mean, you almost never know what you're getting, but we knew what we were getting. So for me, didn't overpay at all. I'd have paid more because we knew what we needed, we knew what we were getting, and we had the money.
I think he's struggled to get up to speed since he's been back in the games that he's been in, and even I watched Ireland against England, and he struggled in that game, but then Ireland struggled in that game all over the pitch. So it's not a decent judge, but even Rodgers says he wasn't up to the fitness that he expected him to come back in, and that's one of the reasons that you want these guys in early. And as you say, we knew what we were getting with him. Rodgers really wanted him. Could we actually say it's like free money because we never spent anything? Because somebody says, "Oh, you spent £9 million. What is this? A flop?" Well, we didn't really spend £9 million because we got that back in, and it's just it's a transaction on a spreadsheet. That's
Mhm.
all it is, and did this money? I could go into all this. Did that money actually exist? Did it ever exist? Was there ever £9 million came out one bank account and into the other? I mean, I think it's just spreadsheet transactions. Really, that's all it is. It's just numbers. Marquee. I would like another Scottish international sign, probably Shankland, to let us drop Bain for this Champions League squad as a third goalkeeper isn't needed at all. I wouldn't want Lawrence Shankland anywhere near Celtic. Um, that was one of the talks before we signed Ida, and you had Shanklin, Marowski. I didn't see the hang with the guy for Aberdeen, and Shanklin for me has always been a bit of a puzzle. He scored goals last season, which seemed to be an outlier apart from one season with Dundee United. And if you look at him this season, he looks unfit, uninterested. No, I never got the Shank. I didn't think Shanklin would have fitted in for us. And I'm happy with Ida, and I'm happy that we actually ended up spending the money for Ida. Really, and Shanklin was a no for me always.
I know, nowhere near. I mean, I'm not against signing guys who support Rangers. Obviously, you've got Jock Stein, Danny McGrain, Kenny Dalglish, the list goes on. But not not a top player for me. I mean, he obviously had a great season last season, but I think he scored something like 13 penalties. I think about 30-40% of his goals were penalties, which, you know, we've known in the past we can miss big penalties. We need a penalty taker. Luckily, we've got Eder now and a few others that can hit a penalty, but no, not for me. He was older as well. I mean, I think he's actually older than Kyogo. He looks a bit overweight, if I'm being honest. I mean, he's good at holding up the ball. This will sound really, really strange, but he came on for about 15 minutes against Hungary in that 1-0 loss at the Euros, and I thought he'd done really, really well for 15 minutes. But that's not a reason to sign him for 3 or 4 million quid. Um, no, not for me. I was never into that. He was always linked with Rangers or I moved down south. I'd have preferred Ida, Miovski, any other, and then Shankland at the very bottom. In terms of Scottish quotas for the Champions League, Scottish internationals, um, I think it's an opportunity to promote youth players. I mean, fair enough, they're probably not going to get a lot of minutes, but if you're needing a body who's Scottish and has came through an academy, just promote a youth player, get them the experience of travelling with the squad, and then if they're in that European squad, they're probably going to get minutes in league games, because we've made a couple of quid from some academy players in the past, but Mikey Johnson this summer, Kieran Tierney 5 years ago, but I think we really need to start blooding in more young players. Going a bit off topic, I've not been. I've sort of backed Celtic and what they've done with Ben Doak and guys who have gone down south at a very young age. I think there's very little that Celtic can actually do to keep these guys like Daniel Kelly. We can offer them improved wages, offer them a couple of games off the bench and stuff, but at 17, 18, 19 years of age, that's about the best that we can offer. And if they want to go down south, you know, there's very little we can do about that. So, but to offset that, I think it's important to show a pathway to say, look, you'll be in the European squad, you'll get the minutes in the league, you'll be coming off the bench regularly. There is that pathway if you're good enough.
Is the Development League alongside the Champions League this year where the under-20s play each other and mirror the games? Is that the Next Gen series? That's what it was called. I couldn't remember its
I
name. The Next Gen
know that's
series.
been the case in the past, but I honestly don't know. No
Because
idea.
that's where we spied Edouard. That's where, because Eddie played against us in
All
that.
right. Oh, I never knew that.
So that's where the club were put on to French Eddie. Now, some of us have been doing your jobs for us, Patrick. Scott Dougal comes in to tell us Canada drew nothing each last night, which is good. Seemingly, Alpha 0964. Canada drew 0-0 with Mexico away this morning. AJ not in the playing squad. So I didn't ken whether that's a worry or no, but we'll find out closer to the time. I'm sure the manager will tell us on his press conference on Thursday or Friday. Truthfully, I've got no worries about Tony Ralston coming in. I think Ralston done all right for Scotland over the two games over the Nation League Hingway. Ralston's a dependable backup domestically. But as you say, I would like to have AJ back for the Champions League game. Alpha comes in again. Trusty was an unused sub for the USA v New Zealand, no CCV, and they drew one each. The games must have been played early on this morning. Got to have been. So the guys will be heading back. So they'll get back. What day is Wednesday? They'll get back tomorrow. Light day training maybe. Then get prepared for the game on Friday. And Plunge McNugget tells us Malowski scored for his country last night as well. So that all those who wanted to see him in a Celtic jersey, the big man's still banging in the goals. Also, somebody banging in the goals. Paulo Bernardo scored for Portugal under 21s the other night as well. And he captained Portugal under 21s. Now, Portugal have got some amount of talent. I think that was shown against Scotland and also in the Euros and that. They've got some amount of talent in the midfield. But the fact is, let's take this back. Let's have a look at this. We've got the Portuguese under 21 captain and we got him for under £4 million. We can talk about our big money signings, but we got the Portuguese under 21 captain for under £4 million. That's scary when you actually start thinking about it in those optics.
Absolutely. This is a top nation who regularly reach the quarterfinals of the Euros and the World Cup. Obviously get the better of Scotland late on Sunday night. To touch on Bernardo specifically, I wasn't massive on signing Bernardo up until I think maybe towards the end of the season. He's obviously a young player. He's tall, physical, good at winning the ball, good at driving forward, as we've seen in the cup final. And I thought, for 3-4 million, if it keeps Rodgers happy, he's a promising player. Let's go for it. Benfica Academy product as well, so that always bodes well. But I mean, since he's came into the side, he's been brilliant. The first half performance against Rangers was phenomenal. I didn't think he started the second half all that well, and then he was sort of hooked about the 60th minute. but the first half he was unbelievable. Obviously, it'll be a big honour for him to captain his country, even if it's just at under 21s. But it's a very competitive squad he's got to try and break into. I mean, just guys like Bernardo Silva, João Felix. I don't know them off by heart, but it's a fantastic national side that he's trying to break into. So to be trusted with the captaincy at his age for that squad is obviously a big deal. And I think Yogi said in the past we bored Benfica to death to get that bargain buy of 3.5 million. I think we're emailing them every day for 2 months
That's the
to
WhatsApp
try and
messages, eh? What you watching
aye
on
and
Netflix? Do you want my
aye
password
and
for
mean
Netflix? Do you want
and
2 million
meanwhile they're
pound on my net?
trying to sell
Uh,
another guy for 80 million or something, and we've bored them into submission. Um, You know, I think it's a fantastic signing. He's played really well. But interesting to see going forward because I think McCowan looks a decent player. He'll probably, come in after the European games and stuff. But I mean, Bernardo's done really well. Hatate's done really well. McGregor's the captain, and then you've got Engels for 11 million. So it's again a really exciting time to be a Celtic fan, and a really good headache for the manager to have in that midfield.
this is one of the things I was thinking about when I was watching the interviews, and it's quite glad that it's quite good that Celtic have eventually got all these interviews out with the guys that they signed. That's what happens when you sign 4 players in the space of 48 hours. You can't get all the social media done all at the same time, so it gives you content in quiet weeks. I was impressed with McCowan, really impressed with him. I was more impressed with what he says about Callum McGregor when he came on the pitch against Rangers, what McGregor says to him. And I went, wow, that guy's your captain. Imagine coming on the pitch, McGregor, and you've got this, by the way, but if you haven't, I'm behind you. I mean, that is how to settle a guy who's probably nervous as anything. He's got a nervous energy. I says to the guy that sits next to me at Celtic Park when McCowan came on, I says, lad, how much do you think he'll get booked? He's the next booking, because he's going to flee into a challenge anew. He's going to half somebody because he'll just be that. I remember Ben Doak came on and he halved somebody right away because it's just that adrenaline coming on in a Celtic Rangers game, eh? But he handled it well. I thought Engels is a bit more, what could I say, media trained in the interview that he gave, says all the right things. What type of midfielder are you, Arnie? Aye, well, I can defend and I can attack. So that's what type of midfielder. Yeah, and I think McCowan will play a part for us, and it probably will be for the bench. And you're having a look at that Falkirk game as well. The Falkirk,
Hmm.
so that's after Bratislava, we've got Falkirk. So you're having a look at that game, and you're going, well, you could give Callum McGregor a rest in that game, but because we've got one game a week, you might get a stronger team. Because after Bratislava, you've got Falkirk at home, then you've got a full week until you actually play St Johnstone away. So the
Aye.
manager might look at it and go, I didn't need to rotate as much for the Falkirk game because I've got a week to another game. Let's talk about Engels. Now, I'm going to lay it on the line here right away. Anybody singing a song by Robbie Williams about a Celtic player deserves to be fired for a cannon for the top of the North Stand. I am not having that one little bit, no matter how good the guy is. Anybody singing a Robbie Williams song about our £11 million signing should not be anywhere near Celtic Park. And this is a notion that should be hammered out to anybody. We have to think of a different song. We have to think of a different song. I think the player himself looked all right against Rangers. He eased himself into the game. I had a wee watch him where I'm on 4-1-2 because he was playing up that right hand side, and he made quite a few runs that we didn't find. He's
Mm.
only been in the building 24 hours, and I was thinking to myself, going, once the players get to know what he does, where he goes, then we could have a player there. We could actually have a player there because he made quite a few runs that we just didn't see. Because the players are no used to playing with him. There's no connection there with the players, eh? But he got into
Aye.
space, he tracked back, he looked all right touch. He's quite a big fella,
Mhm.
rangy run, eh? He didn't play in the
Aye.
Bundesliga, and he only turned 21 on Sunday, seemingly. Eh? It was his
I
20th.
knew he was 20 when he. It was his birthday, wasn't it? I knew
Aye.
he was 20 when we signed him. I mean, I think it's impossible to judge a game that early on. I mean, he signed, what was it, 11 o'clock on the Friday night, and then that game was, he'd have came on about 1:30 on the Sunday. So he'd barely been in the country for 2 days. So impossible to judge, I think. And even, after that game, he'd have went straight to Belgium for those Belgian
Mm-hmm.
games. So impossible to judge. Not impossible, but, I'd maybe wait until, giving him the full night against Falkirk is probably a very good idea. Um, and then it's obviously a selection headache for the manager after that if he plays well. Uh, Trying to pick three of that four. You've got Falkirk after Bratislava. I'd like to think we're capable of winning that game by rotating one or two players. And then after Dortmund, you've got Ross County away, and that's actually a 5 day gap. That's Tuesday to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the international break afterwards. So, like what you're saying, you might see less rotation than what we might expect. Um,
I think we saw that at the start of the season, and
mhm.
Rodgers basically came out and says that he says I'm playing one game a week. We didn't need.
There's no need to rotate.
There's no need to rotate because they're
And
getting the recovery. Sorry, O'Neill.
guys like McGregor who need to manage their time, they're retired from international football, so they
Mm-hmm.
can get a 2 week holiday now. So I think McGregor will look really, really fresh the first half of this season. Um, and it's obviously great having those four players in those three positions that you can rotate and then bring McCowan in as well. But no, I'd agree with you. I think if we start playing Robbie Williams over the tannoy, I'll rip up my season ticket. I'll rip it up in front of Philippe Clement, even though it's made out of plastic.
I ripped up my season ticket. Did you know? Really? Was it from 1986? Like, was it? Oh, it's a it's a turn of phrase. I'll rip up my season ticket. I maybe won't go as far as that, but Celtic just need to get rid of that that notion of playing that song and using that song. Definitely, definitely. We play Hearts. Now Hearts have had a dreadful start to the season. Um, I think they're bottom of the league, second bottom of the league. I'm not actually 100% sure. When you look at the team
Uh,
that started the Rangers game, um, I think the only change I can actually see for the Rangers game is possibly Ralston coming in. I can't. It
yeah,
will probably depend on fitness. Rodgers might chuck a wee curveball in. Depends on when Maeda and that get back for Japan. You could actually see Forrest starting, but the only change I would really expect to see would be Ralston coming in for Johnson if Johnson is not fit enough.
aye, and we're dead lucky in that position because it's the one position, since Ralston's upped his game and, we had Johnston in before Jovanovic left. The last few years, it's been a really dependable position. You've not had any worries at all about Ralston stepping. Obviously, for the Champions League, you want your first choice right back, but we've had no worries in that position for just over 3 years now, and it's a really nice place to be. I think it'll be the same team largely. Johnston sort of complicates things if, Rodgers might want to give him a bit more time to recover. But I think it'll be largely the same team on Saturday as what it will be for Wednesday night against Bratislava. And it's really, really nice to have a 3 o'clock kickoff, not a 3 o'clock kickoff, a Saturday game. I don't
Yes,
know
we
if it
haven't
is
had
three
one
o'clock
this
actually.
season, eh?
Aye, it is. Aye,
Aye.
and it is 3 o'clock. I've just had a look. Obviously it comes with a lot of benefits. We could get Stephen Naismith sacked. That's a benefit, because
That's
he's
all.
had a,
That's always
a
good news. That eh? No, no, no. We can't. We are joking there, eh? But I can't get that
aye,
picture.
only partly.
Anytime you see, anytime I see Naismith's face, I just see him growling at Johnny Hayes. That no remember when he scored
Oh,
across
yeah.
Johnny Hayes, eh? And at that
Aye, the
day,
side of the
through
Tynecastle pitch, aye.
and for that day, he always seemed to raise his game against us when he played for Hearts as well, eh?
Mm.
I wouldn't mind taking 6 off them, 5 or 6 off
Aye.
them,
And
and like putting a nail in his coffin, definitely.
with a Saturday Sunday, I mean we play the Saturday, Rangers are away to Tannadice on the Sunday. We've a chance to go 8 clear, which is pretty unbelievable in the middle of September. Albeit we've played an extra game, right? But you've got Aberdeen up there now. Well, for the moment anyway, both on 12 points. They play Motherwell at home, and I don't think Motherwell have had a great. Sorry, they've gone unbeaten in 3 games, but um, you know, you'd maybe fancy them to beat Motherwell. And then you've got two teams, 8 points clear, and a struggling Rangers side going up to Tannadice. And Dundee United, it's 2 wins and 2 draws, but they're unbeaten in the league. And there's a bit of rivalry there, there's a bit of sting. So it could be a very interesting weekend. I know obviously we need to do our business first, but I mean Hearts have been a totally different team this season. They've been rotten under Naismith, and we have been much improved on last season. We look free flowing. You know, Rogers has spoke about it, and I think McCowan spoke about it at his presser. We're just relentless off the ball. You need to respect the 30%, and I think we have been phenomenal at doing that. There's a lot of chat about the first 10 minutes, how much Rangers pressed us, but I mean, we don't give teams a minute when we're
No.
off the ball. We work so hard, and I think I came out the ground last Sunday thinking Hatate had a poor game, and then you watch back the highlights and you realise how much running he was doing, pressing, because he was up there with Kyogo as a
Mhm.
two, and then he had the wee flick round the corner for the offside goal. He played it into McGregor. McGregor breaks free, and then he's got all that space between midfield and defence to run, and he plays it through to Kuhn. The rest is history. But
There's
um,
there's an eye test with Hatate though, because he tries risky balls at times, and sometimes they
aye,
didn't come off. And I think that gives you that. Sometimes gives you that notion that he is having a bad game. Then you didn't see what else. I mean, you're judging guys for sometimes in a football game, guys will get only under 20 touches of the ball. And then
mhm,
you say, well, that boy had a great game. Well, he's only had 15 touches of the ball, but like Atati sometimes gives up that vibe. You go, he's been rotten. But then when you actually look at the whole, what's the manager did and the coaching staff did, they'll go, no, he wasn't.
mhm,
He wasn't really rotten.
mhm.
I'm looking forward to Saturday. As you say, Saturday 3 o'clock. Um, I've been really impressed. My Brendan meter. I may as well talk about my Brendan meter. My Brendan meter was always there because I didn't think he looked interested for about December onwards last week. There was a lot going on, and the team were ranked rotten. Let's not beat about the bush. Then when we went to March, we got Pete Brendan. He owned the Belgian Beale. He got us across the line. Then when you've had a look at this summer, it's almost as been as if he's been reinvigorated as well. That running, that close running's got him going. Oh, it seems to ignited a wee fire in him. No relight my fire. No, and I ken ways they're gone in the comments with that. I know ways they're gone in the comments with that. Take that reference there. So where my Brendan hang with is, I'm up at 70-80%, but it's Europe now, eh? Uh,
Yeah, totally.
is Europe is really Europe up there, eh? And he will want to change his record in Europe. He will want to change because he's ready. I've been on record actually saying he's got quite a poor record in Europe, even with Liverpool and with Celtic. And we've
Mhm,
got to a point now if we were talking about performances. We're talking about performances with Ange, and now last season we were talking about performances with Brendan as well. We need results. And
mhm,
I'm not going to say this to be big headed, but not getting 3 points against Bratislava is going to be a massive disappointment
mhm.
because it's a home game against what you could the weakest coefficient nation that we've got. I would say that's correct, maybe.
I mean, if you're just going through it, it's their first time in the Champions League. They were horsed 5-0 the day that we beat Rangers 3-0. I think you're right. I think they are the lowest coefficient team.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the smallest, if not the smallest budget. We're at home, as you say, much larger budget. If you look at the odds, I think we are 2 to 5 odds on to win the game. Brendan, as much as he sort of half called out Michael Nicholson um, in some press conferences with the phone ringing and stuff like that, we've spent the money. He's got what he wants. He says the squad is much improved. We're playing free-flowing football, so my Brendometer's up at 98, 99%, if I'm being honest. I've totally fallen for the psychotic nature of peak Brendan, but it is all on him now. It's on him and the players, and anything short of 3 points against Bratislava is just unacceptable at this stage. Because if we're not going to do it now, we're never going to do it. This
I
is the
think
perfect opportunity.
I think the format should suit us, or maybe that's just massively wishful thinking because we've had so many horror shows in the Champions League. They're going like that. Change a format. What went in the past didn't exist anywhere. We can actually bin that because it's a new format. But you're having a look at we're playing the weakest team that we're going to face at home.
Yep.
And this is the type of game, if you want to make any sort of mark in Europe, uh, at all. This is the type of game that you should be taking 3 points from. Take the 3 points for that, then you're going to Dortmund and you're getting a free hit in Dortmund. Nobody's expecting you to get anything for Dortmund. But if you've got that 3 points on the board, if you get beaten Dortmund, you go, we've still got that free. We've still got that 3 points. We're off the mark in this season's Champions League, and getting a good start is something that we need to do, and we've got the perfect opportunity to actually get a decent start in the Champions League. Patrick, that's us been talking about an hour. There's 748 folk here on a Wednesday afternoon to listen to me ramble about. What was Tony Cassidy, this was it. Tony Cassidy, yes, the Next Gen series is on. It's 3 p.m. at Wednesday next week. If any of you are about for that, get yourself along to that. Get yourself along to that game. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Patrick, thank you for your time. Paul will be back tomorrow with JP, I think. Paul's away filming This Is Acsom just now. Links to Gordon Stratton and John Hartson are down below. And lads, see you all later. Lads and lassies, see you all later. And remember, just dinna be bams to each other. See you later.